Dedicated to the dreamers. Yeah. Life in the grind. It's dedicated to the dreamers. It's life in the grind. Dedicated to the dreamers. Dream big, have faith, work hard. Never quit, put your trust in God. Stay true and remember who you are. Never forget how you made it this far. Dream big, have faith, work hard. Never quit, put your trust in God. Stay true and remember who you are. Never forget how you made it this far. I feel like this world is trying to break my soul. I say no, I say no, I say no, you can't take it.
What's going down, everybody? Welcome to the Root of It All show. I'm your host, Jody McGarity Jr., and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Root of It All. Episode 12 is where we are right now. And my special guest today is not a guest to me, but a dear brother of mine, a dear friend, but also my boss for the Positive Coaching Alliance. And this is none other than Mr. Trennis Jones. Trennis, how you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me on. This has been great. Congratulations on this many episodes and this many conversations. So hopefully I don't devalue the stuff that's come before me, right?
Oh, of course not, man. It's only going to go higher from here, man. Definitely. So for our listeners, man, give them a little synopsis of your life story.
Absolutely. So born and raised in Austin, Texas. Born to two great people, my mom and dad, who grew up in Louisiana and Texas respectively, and I'm the brother of a younger brother who I grew up with. So the two of us, or the five of us, or the four of us in the home, grew up in Austin. Grew up loving basketball, grew up loving athletics, just in terms of our family. My grandfather was a Negro League baseball player. My uncle is a basketball coach in the college ranks, and so athletics has been a very big part of our lives. My wife used to work for the Minnesota Timberwolves for 13 years, so a lot of this stuff was important to us. And so growing up in Austin was important, for us to connect with and through athletics. Oftentimes, my brother and I were the only kids of color or Black kids, and in particular on many of the teams and many of the schools we attended in Austin, Texas. And so, that has created a unique perspective that we have, a tougher skin, for us to kind of develop. But also, I think, a blessing for us to be able to live in a lot of different worlds, be able to communicate with a lot of different people. And we've been empowered and really blessed by God to, I think, be able to lead in that space because of our background, even though that background may have been a little difficult, if you're, a younger person trying to figure out who you are in the midst of, being the only person that looks like you in your respective school or your respective team.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that, man, in that path, talk to us about your athletic career. Where did that take place, and then how far did you go in it?
Sure. So obviously Austin, Texas. Grew up, born and raised here. Attended Westlake High School, where I was the first Black basketball player ever on the varsity level there. That would be, I guess, I'm aging myself, mid '90s. So that was a unique perspective. Was blessed to be able to attend the University of Colorado and play basketball there as well. Went from there to be a sports agent with a company called Octagon for almost 5 years. Moved from there into the professional ranks, working for the Phoenix Suns in their front office with respect to basketball operations and developing our team. And here I am as a member of the Positive Coaching Alliance, driving forward positivity in youth sports. So a lot of it obviously started on the court, but as all of our examples or experiences with with basketball, as my college coach used to say, at some point the ball goes flat for all of us. And so it does, but it doesn't mean that you can still, you have to stop being involved or stop participating. And I've been really lucky and blessed to stay in athletics really for the majority of my career.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great to hear. And so in that, your journey, how was your journey as a sports agent? What were the highs and the lows in being a sports agent, just in case we have some listeners who want to probably venture into their career path?
Sure. So, being a sports agent is a very unique experience. It's enjoyable. It's very competitive. One of the benefits that I think I had with that is just developing relationships and some of the clients or even the people that I recruited that ended up not selecting me as their agent. You were still able to connect with and maintain relationships with, to this day. So the Chris Pauls of the world, I think, ended up being probably the largest client that we had, at least basketball wise at the time.
Okay.
So, having a person like that is rooted in God, rooted in his family and his brother and his mom and dad, Charles and Robin, there's just great people. So, you're lucky to kind of come across the paths of those types of folks. But, with being a sports agent, you're always on. It's an environment that doesn't have a lot of regulation in terms of, paying players and guys trying to skirt the rules and things of that sort. So that becomes a bit difficult to help manage, but it's competition, and that's not the only job that people skirt the issues or try to find a way around the rules on. But it was an amazing experience, and one that I cherish, but I'm glad that I'm not necessarily having to chase down 18-year-olds currently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so in this again, Trennis is one of our, used to be executive director, but now he's regional director of Positive Coaching Alliance. And in this, what we do is live workshops for various organizations, schools, club teams, things of that nature. And we've had an adjustment. So could you talk to us about what that adjustment has been like for you personally when we had to shift mid-March into strictly digital virtual workshops due to COVID-19?
Sure. So, certainly Positive Coaching Alliance, we believe that youth sports is an amazing way to teach kids life lessons. But I think a big part of, even in addition to that I think we have always believed in and led forward, at least in our chapter in our region, but also want to acknowledge that sports has the ability to bring people together. And so, that's really our call. That's what we've been doing. Certainly the work that we were doing, at least in this Central Texas, Austin / San Antonio area, was not only supporting youth leagues and schools in the development of their culture to hopefully encourage more kids to participate, but to also make sure that we're using sports as a connector and as an empowerer to allow kids to do better in their lives and to put them, on a path going forward. So we have a level of depth that we've sought in the relationships that we seek here, certainly in PCA, but specifically in Central Texas, where I have a little bit more influence. And so that's been a little bit more difficult because you're having to build those relationships virtually or continue them virtually, where before we were able to be in the midst of one another, and it's a little easier to build a relationship there. So a lot of the work that we're doing right now is just over communicating with the partners that we work with, the kids that we impact, as well as obviously the workshops that we deliver no longer, or at least currently right now, not in person. And so, relying on Zoom, relying on technology to be able to communicate and connect with those people. And I think we've been able to do a decent job with it, but I do think that the reason why we've been able to connect with those people or stay connected is because we built, the foundation of the relationship initially. And so they know who we are, they know what we care about, and we're able to ask them the tough questions to figure out what they're struggling with and figuring out how we can support them through this season of all of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important because one of the main challenges that we're going through, as you and I both know, is we have the big question mark of will there be high school seasons for sports, and let alone professional. And right now, there's so much concern with the spike rising for COVID. That's a huge concern. How do you think that could be potentially a huge effect on some of our partners who are high schools?
Yeah, there's a lot of unknown, and it's not just the high schools, right? It's the entire educational system.
Yeah.
A lot of these YSOs and these youth sports organizations their financial health is based on kids signing up and families showing up to the soccer game on Saturday. And if that is not a current option for us, or even a safe option for us currently, there's lots of unknown right now. And it's
Yeah.
my hope, it's my prayer that we can people can find sober heads, and base whatever they do on fact, what they would, base whatever they're doing to make sure that they're loving on and supporting their kids, as opposed to whatever the politics are, or whatever YouTube channel they found, or whatever their uncle's Facebook page says, right? Like, a lot of that is
Yeah.
floating around, and I think right now, because that's been floating around, a lot of people have just distributed that and disseminated that, and even allowed that to seep into their minds. They've made decisions going out and not wearing masks and things of that sort that have at least spun us here in Texas into a place where there's a significant outbreak. So it's a hope that everybody can be a little bit more thoughtful about what we need to do collectively to make those right decisions, so all of us can get back to whatever normal is supposed to be a little sooner than normal, knowing that a lot of the stuff's out of our control. But the one thing I can control is how I interact, whether or not I wear a mask, whether or not I wash my hands, all of those things that I have personal control over. We hope that everybody can start to do that, so we can get back on the playing field with our kids.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I just, and I say this often in these podcasts and just in casual conversations, I just never thought it got to the day, man, where we have to just tell people to wash their hands, man. Wash
Right.
your
You're
nasty
right.
hands.
Right. Yeah. Wash your behind, wash your hands. That's what you're asking you to do. It's not a lot, but for whatever reason, when people feel like they are on a team, and the team says don't wash your hands or don't wear a mask, then, we all have, I guess innately human nature has a way to where we all want to be connected to something. And if those people, people feel like they're connected to a group that says that they need to make sure that they're proving a point by not wearing a mask, then it's super unfortunate, and it affects all of us. It's not just that one person that wanted their Instagram post to be retweeted or picked up or liked or whatever else, from the powers that be. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, but know that the only thing we can really do is make sure that we're doing everything we can individually, so collectively we can come out of this in a stronger position.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so now we get to this part to what we're dealing with as well, not just on top of COVID, but we're dealing with the issues of social injustice. We're dealing with racism. Provide your thoughts on, your feelings of how everything started, which actually, the big meat of it, this started with the death of George Floyd up until the point of where we are now.
Sure. Yes. I mean, obviously, the tragic death of Mr. Floyd has, kind of put into motion a lot of, conversation and disappointment, really, in our society. Now, his death didn't start with that, and unfortunately, it won't end with it. But I do think that the moons have aligned to where people are at home, had a little bit more time to kind of assess, how foul his murder was, how blatant it was, how obvious it was. And so it's triggered into motion a lot of other things that already were, I think, part of, America's original sin. And I think that if there's anything to come out of this, is that I think a lot more people are, thinking about, are they part of the problem and part of the solution? And, they know that yes, most situations will not end with someone being murdered, by the knee of a police officer, but there's lots of other things that lead into that, to where that individual that chose to murder, George Floyd, felt like he had some level of power and influence, and he didn't feel like there were going to be consequences that are associated with his behavior. And so those are the things that I think that we can, if we can nip those things in the bud, stop a situation to where a George Floyd or myself or yourself or next is part of that. And that's the
Mhm.
scary part, because I think all of us know that is a possibility for any of us. And so we have to protect ourselves, protect our family members, protect those that we love, protect those that we don't know or like, right? Like they still deserve to live too. And we have to make sure that racism is ostracized. It's not acceptable. And people to understand that there are more consequences of racism, from racism, than just someone, passing away. There's lots of things and lots of situations that people are struggling with because, we have not approached racism with, our face forward and aggressively. We've just hoped that it's gone away, and it's not going to go away if we don't approach it with the proper energy and with the right numbers, meaning
Yeah.
everybody involved,
Yeah.
to get rid of this thing.
Yeah. So with this being, this interview is happening on July 13th. There's a lot of things to unpackage, but one of the major things was we most of us know who are tuned to social media and the news outlets. University of Texas athletes came out and pretty much came out with the demand and said, "Here are our demands for change to happen." And that news just recently came out a little under an hour ago at this particular time. And so in this, talk about what we at PCA are doing to be able to also go about change and the message that we're delivering, to pretty much anybody who's a part of us, who's partnering with us in the nation.
Absolutely. So I think first and foremost, it starts with us, acknowledging that PCA is a flawed organization that needs more diversity, and there has been blind spots, both blind spots currently and blind spots for over the 20 years that we've proudly been, creating a healthier environment around youth sports. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that, this opportunity has given us a focus that we still had and will continue to have around, making the culture around youth sports a healthier one. But I think it requires an intentional conversation around racism and anti-racism specifically, that, if you're not battling racism, then you're allowing it to fester. And that's just kind of what it is. And it's uncomfortable. No one likes to feel uncomfortable. However, I think it's required if we're wanting to change and wanting to grow. And so it starts with that. I think secondly, us tapping into some of the tools and some of the things that we deliver to, the youth sports organizations, and making sure that we use that type of terminology, and that we challenge kids, coaches, parents, leaders to be thoughtful around that, and making sure that they know that this exists. This is something that your kids are taking to their respective fields during a
Mm-hmm.
practice. And so if you're not acknowledging those things, then, you're not serving those kids at the highest level of servitude that you can. And so, we have to really, drive forward that message. I also think that as we elevate certain examples, as we have before, we need to make sure that, the stories, and not just the obvious stories of the Jackie Robinsons, of the world. Let's talk about the Rodney Pages of the world. Let's make sure
Mm-hmm.
that we're, discussing those that have gone, before us. That Rodney Page, the first Black, coach at the University of Texas. Acknowledging those types of folks that, yes, maybe less people know of his story, his plight, his leadership,
Mm-hmm.
because he's not Jackie Robinson, but it doesn't mean that his influence is any less than Jackie Robinson. So a lot of those stories, I think, are hidden in plain sight for us, and so it's
Yeah.
important for us to share those stories and make sure that we use the platform that PCA has been lucky enough to build, for people to know who these people are, that this is not a new conversation, and ask the right questions of people like Mr. Page, so then we can hopefully prevent, from our history repeating itself.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. And so folks like yourself, and then folks like Marty Reed out of the California area for PCA or spearheading this along with other members to help, come up with a plan and solutions to how we're going to deliver this. So, it's just been well pleased at how, the organization such as PCA has, again, as you stated, has, admitted to, there needs to be some clarity in this. There was some unknowns that we were unaware of, and how we're looking to help, provide a resolution to, get through life together. Because again, like the slogan says, life is a team sport. It's going to take all of us working, together to be able to make sure that we make this a safe haven for our kids in the future and for years to come. So definitely appreciate that time. Appreciate your time, because I know you got a busy schedule ahead of you. Before we get off, as always, my guests are always allowed to give words of encouragement to our listeners. What words of encouragement can you give to our listeners today?
Yeah, I just think that it's important for people to recognize that, your first step is what we need. I think a lot of times it's easy to, look at a big, massive problem like COVID-19, like racism, and say, man, what am I supposed to do as this individual that only lives in this one place or only holds this one job to affect change? And I think that we all have to look within ourselves to start and say, okay, where are my blind spots? And secondly, I'm going to start where I am. I'm going to make sure that my circle of friends and the people I, choose to surround myself with are representative of what I would want, or some people that I would be proud of if I had to describe myself by way of the people that I surround myself with. Or, if I'm in charge of hiring, what are the decisions that I personally can make? Not that I'm going to change the entire hiring structure of America, but I can change how I decide to move. Do I decide to treat one kid different than the other, subconsciously or consciously? And so those are the types of steps that I think that I'd like to encourage people to review, to reflect on, and see, what do you have personal control over, and start there. We can have a larger conversation, and we absolutely will. I think it's necessary, but I do think that if we're, faith without works is dead. And so, us just having faith that this thing is going to change, or, that we, I think God is asked us to pray to him and know that he is in full control, but he's also given us the ability to have power within ourselves to do things. And if we aren't doing those things, then I think that, our words have a tendency to, to just go away and to evaporate. And we have to make sure that we're backing up our words with action. And that action starts with something as small as your first step.
Yeah, absolutely. Greatly appreciate that. And so how can listeners stay connected with you, or, ways of staying connected with PCA?
Sure. So Twitter handle, Trennis512, TRENNIS 512. PCA is PCA-centraltx.org is our website. So, we've got a lot of moving parts, a lot of different things and initiatives that we have, events that are upcoming, a golf tournament in August, as well as our third annual Reclaiming Youth Sports, where we're partnering with Mark Henry, and going to have some special guests to virtually kind of work out with some kids on August 15th. So there's lots of opportunities for you to get involved, get your kids involved, get your organization, company involved. Certainly the more donations we can get, the more work we can do as well. So stay connected with us, and certainly give us your feedback too, because we know we don't have all the answers, and it's important for us to engage the community to make sure that we are trending in the right direction.
Absolutely, and greatly appreciate that. And we'll have all of those links and information into the descriptions and comments, and also in the show notes. But again, I want to thank my guest, Trennis Jones, for being a part of this episode today. And thank you all for listening to episode 12 of the Root of It All show, where we're changing lives one podcast at a time. You all take care, stay safe. We'll see you next time.